start the recording and welcome you, this wonderful teacher from Lawrence Elementary School, right? Elementary school in Lawrence. And how many years, Erika Smoot, have you been teaching in Lawrence?
This is my 31st year.
So you started teaching when you were in kindergarten, is that it?
Of course.
Of course, that's right. That's right. Don't miss a chance to claim that.
So,
Listen, so are you new to Lawrence? I mean, talk to me about your
oh my
background in,
goodness.
yeah.
So I was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, and my mother moved me to Lawrenceville, New Jersey, when I was 7. So
Oh,
I
wow.
went
Yes.
to Blackwood Elementary School as a first grader. We did move to Hamilton for 2 years. So second and third, I was not in Lawrence Township. We had such racism issues there. I was actually, believe it or not, the only Black girl in the school,
Oh,
um,
my.
in
In the
Hamilton,
school
and
building, in the
in the
building,
school
huh?
building.
Wow.
And the N word was just being thrown around a little too much. And so my mother moved me back to Lawrence in 4th grade. And then I went through the Lawrence system, graduated from Lawrence High. I went to Rutgers, did my student teaching. And then as soon as my student teaching ended, I was hired right in the district. So yeah, in
Oh, wow.
1993, I
Okay.
started teaching in Lawrence full time.
So did you go to Rutgers College or Douglas?
I went to Douglas. Yes.
Ah,
Yeah.
so you see, I knew that distinction. Do you know why?
Why?
I actually chaired the Board of Governors.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I was in the hot seat when they unified the undergraduate. Uh,
Hmm.
you remember that controversy?
Yes.
And hopefully Douglas has fared very well as a result of all that. And of course, Douglas had some magnificent advocates to ensure that things would work well for the college.
Right.
But you came to Lawrence to teach from a very solid preparatory background out of the
Yes.
Rutgers environment.
Yeah.
Yes. So listen, public education, school boards. I mean, Jesus, I never imagined there would be such an attack on public education as we see today. I too, as you are, you're a parent of what? Two
Two,
uh, kids who came through the Lawrence schools,
two
yes?
Lawrence graduates. Yes.
And I bet they're doing very well. Are they in
Yeah.
college by now? Yeah.
So my daughter went to the University of Louisville.
Okay.
She's a biology major. She graduated last May, and she's gainfully employed as a lab technician,
Hmm.
and lives in Chicago. And my son is a sophomore at Gettysburg College. So he's
Oh,
playing football
okay.
there and in his sophomore
Hmm.
year. And he's an
Wonderful.
economics
Wonderful.
major.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
Yes.
So, are you telling me something good can come out of the Lawrence public schools?
You know, I had some reservations, but yes, something did come out. Something good did come
Yeah.
out of it.
Well, look, Lawrence, we know, and I bet we could say this about any school district in the country. Lawrence is not perfect, but it is a good bang for the buck.
It is.
Uh, I've got three. One is a finance director, another is a journalist, another is a lawyer. And
Right.
they don't ask dad for money, which is one of the signs of success as far as I'm
That
concerned.
is. I'm looking forward to that day.
Yes, yes. So appreciating that there are areas of improvement, of course. What are some of the strong points you see in our system?
Well, um, the diversity has been a real asset. When I went through Lawrence High School, there were very few Black students.
Hmm.
But the diversity has really taught my children to accept others, because they've been exposed to a lot of different people and a lot of different cultural backgrounds.
Yes.
I feel like when they're out in the real world, they kind of have a good sense of who people are, and they're more
Hmm.
accepting of differences, I think, because of that.
Yes. Yes. So that's an asset as far as you're concerned as
Yes.
an educator, and they report to you that this has been of value to them as they've gone out.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what do you hear? Certainly, you read in the media, and it's happening all around us. I noticed um, in a county not too far from here in the paper today, the school board voted, for example, not to adhere to the state regulations regarding the sexual identity of students. I don't know if you read that article, but that's going around now. What do you
It
think of
is.
that?
As an educator, my passion is kids. And so for
Mhm.
me, um, I think being an educator makes me an advocate for children. And in order for children to grow and thrive, they have to be seen and heard. And I think when we start to take away their identity, take away their race, take away who they are, we kind of just erase them like they're invisible.
Mhm. And
And
that you think it has an injurious effect, you think?
absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely.
Well, as a teacher, tell me a little about how you interact with parents.
Well, I think it's all about building relationships. And so I truly feel like my students are like my own kids, and I treat them accordingly. And I think parents know that I genuinely care about their kids. I genuinely make decisions about what I think is best for them, and I think they trust me. And it's definitely a partnership. But I think if they know how you feel about education and about kids and about success, um, it's a partnership and they trust you.
And you're a professional educator.
Yes.
Um, I'm in a different profession, so you know things about the education of young children. I may think I know a lot about that, but you actually have a professional certification to do what you do. So you hear parents talk about determining the curriculum and that kind of thing. Am I getting this right? I think
Oh
I
yeah.
hear that a lot.
Yeah.
So what are some of your experiences on that and your thoughts?
Well, it feels like being an educator is sometimes thankless.
Hmm.
People will go to a doctor, but they would never try to tell their doctor what their diagnosis is or what medication they need or what they need to be cured. But it feels like when it comes to education, everyone thinks that they know what's best for kids or how to teach kids. So
Hmm.
it's really, I think it's just a really, it's a societal thinking that has to be changed.
And what do you think is driving this? I mean, there was a time. Well, let me just say this. I grew up in a home where if my teacher said I needed to stand on my head for 3 hours a day, my grandmother would have had me standing on my head,
Of
you
course.
see, because she trusted the professional to guide me and so forth. What has happened to that?
Oh, boy, I can only say it feels like it's fear. When people are ignorant or unaware or uneducated on a topic and they're afraid of the things they don't know, it feels like they push back,
Hmm.
right? And with all of the changes that are happening in the world and and all those hot topics like race and poverty and culture and identity and disabilities and all those things that society perceives as being different or making kids different. I think when people don't know, they're afraid, and so they push
Hmm.
back on that. And the easiest way to do that is to question the professionals who have a different opinion.
And I hear you saying that the rumblings that we can see in school board meetings or in parents' visitation in school expressing dissatisfaction with this or that is really connected to societal changes at many levels, right?
Absolutely.
Look, my wife and I went out yesterday, and we're in the fourth quarter of life, if you know what I mean.
Oh
So
yeah.
this technology thing, is very interesting. But we went out for a new mobile phone,
Mm-hmm.
and the fellow who helped us there was much younger, very sharp kid, and he said, "Oh, we can transfer all of your data if you'll just sit for a minute. We'll just put everything over in the new phone." And I guess we were thinking he would sit there and type things in. Instead, he plugged a cord in, and in a
Mm-hmm.
matter of minutes, all of our contacts and text messages and everything were in the new phone. And I think even something small like that can leave us a little, as we say, discombobulated. You see,
Yes.
and but that's flowing over into the school setting, isn't it?
Yes.
And the parent is at the microphone now at the school board protesting that the teachers have the gall to know more what to teach their kids than they do.
And you know what's most interesting? You mentioned that article. Everything we teach is state mandated. I mean, teachers aren't just going in and making up things off the top of their head.
You
These are
aren't?
the curriculum. Yeah.
Oh, oh no.
Yeah. Imagine that. I mean, it's all state mandated. The curriculum is approved and state mandated.
So why do you suppose the state would mandate a curriculum? What is their aim, do you think?
Well, I think they're professionals as well. And
They're
they
trying to
know.
prepare the kids, right?
That's right. They know what kids need.
Yeah. But now, early in the conversation, you talked about the value of diversity. Um, that bothers people a little bit too, doesn't it?
Oh, it
Not
definitely.
just not just racial diversity, but all kinds. Like in
Any kind
Lawrence,
of
we have
diversity.
people of different religious backgrounds and
Yes.
so on, right?
Yes.
So the unfamiliar seems to be somewhere in the midst here.
Agreed.
Well, what we have a little audience. It's growing, um, and thanks to a number of people who are working very hard at this. I'd love to have you tell me something you would want this audience to know, because every morning you're in the classroom, I think, before I get out of bed, and you're there, and even at night you're working on evaluations of students. So this is your life. What would you, as a teacher of 3 decades, what would you want this audience to know about the environment that you're in every day?
Well, I think kids can only flourish if they're surrounded by love and acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
They can only be seen and heard if you allow them to do that, right? To be who they are, to express themselves in the way that works, to learn in the way that works best for them, and to build relationships.
Mm-hmm. And they seem to take to that pretty well, right?
It's interesting
And
because the kids never have a problem with these topics.
that's
They
what
are
I wondered.
so
Yeah.
accepting of each other. It really is a parental problem.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
I
What is
have
the most?
students, huh? Go ahead.
I was. I think you're about to speak on this. I was going to ask you, what are some of the most outrageous things you hear that parents claim, but you don't see reflected in the student population?
Well, there's a big push on diverse families, and we teach part of the social justice curriculum that I wrote. We teach about diverse families. So, parents are okay talking about kids that are adopted or kids that are raised by grandparents or kids that are raised by single parents, but they don't want to talk about two moms or two dads. But when you are in a community where you have students in your class who have two moms or two dads, that's who they are. And you have to teach that family is family. And it doesn't matter who makes that family, but it's interesting that, the kids have no problem with that. Some of their
Mm-hmm.
friends have two moms or two dads, but it's the parents that are uncomfortable with those family structures.
Wow, wow, wow. And so I don't know, maybe are the students aware of the adult? Sometimes these are not actually parents who are carrying this message, by the way.
Right,
And I'm
right.
wondering if the students are aware of this kind of uproar. And if so, well, maybe at your grade level, not so much. But in general, I'm wondering, how do the students feel about the advocacy of adults compared to their actual experience as you've described it?
Yeah, I mean, in some of the board meetings, there are lots of high school students who speak up and talk about their experiences. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
it goes back to this societal belief that children and teenagers don't have a voice, or they just don't know because they're young, but they do have a voice and they're able to
Yes,
talk about their experiences.
they know a lot more than I did at their age.
Oh,
Uh,
they
oh
certainly
boy.
do. They certainly do.
And they have information at their fingertips that
Yes.
I used to have to take two buses to get to the library to find what they know right from their fingertips,
Oh,
correct?
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now you don't simply, I'm going to tell you, I'm intrigued by the social justice curriculum. You got to talk to me about that a little bit.
Uh-oh.
But we have quite a talented group. I've met a few of our students at the high school level, and we have very talented young people whose voices ought to be an ingredient
Yes.
in our general adult understanding of what is going on. Uh, I think you and I were both at this very moving ceremony after the shootings in
Yes.
some school or another. The high
Hmm.
school kids put on this program that
Yes.
was a state of the art kind of calling the community together.
Yes. Hmm.
And it seems to me that we have a lot to gain
Yes.
uh, from just being good listeners as adults.
I agree. I agree.
Uh, well, what? Tell me about the social justice curriculum before I let you go.
Okay, so I attended a conference, and it was actually out of Pitt University, and it was a woman who had started a curriculum to address differences. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was led by that, and I was passionate about it, and I talked to supervisors about starting a curriculum. And so that curriculum entailed books and lessons on differences. So there were monthly topics that were centered around disabilities, cultural differences, identity, diverse families, dealing with poverty. And so it was like just teaching kids to accept differences.
Mm-hmm.
to accept people for who they are, not pass judgment on them because they're different, and also just understanding. I mean, it goes back to that lack of education, and how we're afraid of things that are different. So teaching kids, about different disabilities, about how
Mhm.
people live, when they don't have the necessities they need, um, about being true to yourself, and expressing yourself in the way that you're most comfortable.
Am I right to assume young people are very, very eager to hear this kind of thing in the classroom?
Yes. Yes, they love it because they embrace
Well,
differences. They embrace their
well,
differences.
what time will you be in the classroom on any given day?
Well, I tend to get there early in the morning and leave right at the end of the day. So I'm usually pulling up around 7 a.m.
Okay, now I'm talking to you a little after the ordinary dinner hour. So I'm not going to keep you because you have to get refreshed and be in the classroom.
Oh yeah.
Uh, but let me say this. I'm a Georgian. I grew up in Jim Crow, Georgia, way down in the bowels of Georgia, not to be confused with Atlanta.
Okay.
And I was telling a friend the other day that when I was a kid, I read some book or other about Harlem when I was a kid. And let me say, I was in a town that didn't actually have a bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
But I found I had this book somehow, and I read about Small's Paradise, and I read about Seventh Avenue and so forth. And when I was an adult, with no real expectation that I would go to New York, I came down to Princeton to be interviewed to go to school from Rhode Island on the bus. And I woke up as the bus was coming down through New York City, and I looked out the window
Mm-hmm.
and I saw a sign, Small's Paradise. And then we got to Lenox Avenue, and I could look around the corner and I saw the marquee, the Apollo Theater.
Yes.
This was my first experience of New York City, but this was all familiar to me because as a young kid, way down in Georgia, I read about it in books.
Books.
And I see this appeal to limit what young people can read today. And I
Yeah.
shudder to think how their environment is being truncated by this prohibition. Do you share that view?
Absolutely. I think about when I came through Lawrence Township, or when I was young, I came from a divorced home. I've been in a situation where I was one of the only Black children in the school. And I didn't have books about diverse families. I didn't have books about having a single mom and visiting my dad on the weekends. I didn't have books about what it was like to be a brown child amongst all white children. And these
Mm-hmm.
are the books that kids need to read to be able to accept each other and feel
Yes,
like, to see both sides, right? For
yes,
children to
yes.
feel like there is nothing wrong with you because you're different. And also for other children to look at them and say, it's okay as well that we're different. So, I mean, it's kids need to see themselves in the literature, and other kids need to learn about the kids that are shown in this literature. So it really would benefit everyone.
Well, my wife and I are grandparents, and we want teachers like you to teach our granddaughters. And
Yes,
I want to thank you for taking just a few minutes with me so that
absolutely. Thanks
the
for having
audience,
me.
have you enjoyed this? You're not
I
going
have,
no,
absolutely.
so the next time you see my number pop up on your phone, you're not going to say, "Oh my God, that's Bill
No,
Howard."
nope, I'm going to answer.
Okay, thank you so much and have a wonderful evening. And
You
give all
too.
those beautiful little faces a hello for me
I
tomorrow.
certainly will.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, bye bye.